To win the fight, the only force is not enough. Knowledge, experience, skills and ingenuity are needed. Today we will talk about such a sport as Army H2H, that is hand-to-hand combat. Hello, Newsoldier and Touch! As a rule, hand-to-hand combat skills are owned by representatives of law enforcement agencies. In any other case, the use of this combat in street fights can lead to the death of the attacker. Most often this type of combat must be used during capture operations, when speed and noiselessness are important and the use of firearms is limited for some reason. Often, improvised means as a knife, a saber shovel and a stick can be used during the battle. Hand-to-hand combat without weapon is much less common. How to fight properly? Any section of Army hand-to-hand combat distinguishes three main phases of its conduct. The first, the initial phase of the battle, approaching. It is usually characterized by offhand shooting and throwing various types of weapons. Further blows can follow, either with the use of weapons or without it. At this stage, it is possible that one of the opponents will be able to win by knocking out the enemy with an accurate blow. The second, if the fight is not completed, then the second phase begins, falling to the ground or knocking down. The purpose of this action is to prevent further actions of the enemy and take a more advantageous position. The third, after the enemy is knocked down, the third phase begins, finishing off. In street conditions, this is usually kicking. For law enforcement agencies, either fixation of the enemy or the use of painful techniques are usually used in this phase. When acting against a group of opponents, instead of the second stage, it is possible to use one of the attackers as a shield, or throwing him at the feet of the attackers hinder their advance. Have you ever used the techniques of Army hand-to-hand combat in your life? Share your stories in the comments below the video. Basic principles of combat. The first, avoid being in position on the opponent's line of attack, because you can be knocked down by the inertia of the enemy's movement alone, even if you manage to dodge his blow. The second, try to strike from any position. In this case, heavy blows are not always important. Many light blows can hinder the opponent's actions if they are unexpected. The third, try to get in a comfortable position and avoid limiting your mobility by crossing your arms or legs. The fourth, if possible, upset the opponent's balance. This will make it difficult for him to deliver more powerful blows. The fifth, be relaxed and focused. This will give speed to your movements. The sixth, improvise according to the situation. The seventh, take advantage of the features of the area around you. The eighth, try to keep fight time to a minimum and save energy by avoiding unnecessary movements and jumps. The ninth, periodically get closer. This will allow you to determine the next actions of the enemy and will not give him the opportunity to deliver an unexpected strong blow. When working with a group of opponents, the following is relevant. Avoid retreat. Use one of the opponents as a human shield while applying pain techniques to him to control movement. Use the enemy as a limit for the movement of the rest. Do not forget about the others. Use improvised means if there are several opponents. Be in motion. Do not scatter attention to the recount of opponents. Falling, try to defend yourself and strike from below. Use your opponent as a counterweight to get up. Army hand-to-hand combat and its features. We note right away that we do not consider hand-to-hand combat as a panacea for all ills. At present, questions related to it have shifted more towards the side that a huge educational effect, towards the development of psychological as well as special physical qualities necessary for a warrior to fight. This is an increase in psychological and physical resistance to the effects of adverse environmental factors, the development of the level of subtle perceptions and the use of reserve capabilities of the body, the development of dexterity, resourcefulness, and the ability to make non-standard decisions. From this point of view, training for hand-to-hand combat becomes indispensable. The experience of real combat operations in recent years shows that hand-to-hand combat in its pure form is an extremely rare phenomenon. The most likely possibility of its occurrence is the actions of intelligence units for special purposes. These possibilities are defined by the conditions for performing tasks to which special purpose reconnaissance units are involved, the nature and specifics of the actions of units, the nature of the terrain on which reconnaissance and special activities are carried out. Further, given the presence of a significant number of athletes and specialists in martial arts among hand-to-hand combat instructors in the Russian army, we consider it necessary to make the following clarifications. Russian and foreign experts mainly teach synthesized hand-to-hand combat. This refers to a set of standard situations and typical techniques from the same martial arts. With rare exceptions, such hand-to-hand combat is built on predominantly striking techniques, either directly borrowed from martial arts or with a slight layering of boxing techniques. Such construction of training predetermines a memorized sequence of actions, which obviously limits personal initiative to standard tactics. The described style of hand-to-hand combat relies on a completely different methodological and tactical approach. This system does not develop any single technique or a set of techniques and combinations, at first glance the most effective and frequently encountered, but develops a constant readiness for optimal, expedient actions to complete a combat mission. The proposed system of hand-to-hand combat takes into account the anthropological features of the Slavs and closely related peoples. This is an important factor that takes into account the specific location of the center of gravity, the predominant development of muscle groups, motor stereotypes formed by everyday life, and other constitutional indicators. In the process of training, a warrior gets rid of potential stereotypes, which allows him to show creativity and non-standard thinking. That is, to conduct hand-to-hand combat as flexibly as possible, according to prevailing conditions. Also, a deeply developed rational methodology allows to train the listener in the shortest possible time. The difference from martial arts lies in the fact that the athlete acts within the strict framework of the rules and in accordance with sports ethics, and the situation in which the warrior operates is often difficult to predict. An athlete can correct his mistakes during a duel, change the tactics of a fight, switch from one technique to another, etc. And one unsuccessful action in battle can cost soldier's life. The athlete lives strictly according to the regime, eats, trains, rests. A warrior, on the other hand, performs a combat mission in any conditions, including the most unfavorable ones. He cannot prepare for one fight for months, like an athlete for a calendar tournament. Russian system is based on the long-established laws of honor and valor of the Russian army. Regarding army hand-to-hand combat, one can also add that it is determined primarily by three components: orientation of personality, the degree of conscious control of personal mental processes, and technical methods of activity. This fundamentally distinguishes this system and this type of hand-to-hand combat from other systems and styles. And this difference is created not by the development of any actions, techniques, knowledge and skills, not by the classification of the system, but in the way of using the entire arsenal of one's knowledge and skills. The described method of realizing the specific goals of a fighter is based on professional excellence that has become natural and something taken for granted. A set of signs, combination of activity with the individuality of the person himself, representing his activity in a certain applied area qualitatively and monolithically, and realization of personal motives and goals by the available methods and means. In view of the foregoing, the differences in the totality of biomechanical movements, techniques, stances, tactics and strategies between martial arts and army hand-to-hand combat, the goal of which is the survival of a person, become obvious. In a warrior, these differences are due to the presence of weapons and equipment. For example, a heavy bulletproof vest weighs about 24 kilograms, an unloading vest with ammunition from 10 to 12 kilograms. All equipment with weapons can be up to 50 kilograms. It is difficult to imagine an athlete with two 16-kilogram kettlebells on his belt, who woke up with an alarm at dawn, made in the easiest version a march of 20 to 30 kilometers, or a 200 or 400 meter crawl, and overcoming obstacles, and after that would go to ring to wave legs, shod in army boots, various mawashi, yoko and other gear at their opponent's head. In addition, the conditions for the emergence of hand-to-hand combat determine the presence of a limited space that will not allow large swinging, sweeping movements with a large amplitude. The limited space naturally imposes various restrictions on actions in this space, and if we remember the possibility of a fight on a wet and slippery surface, on snow, on a slope, then the unacceptability of the techniques used in martial arts will become simply blatant. According to the experience of the Great Patriotic War, most often Soviet scouts acted in hand-to-hand combat in night searches and ambushes. In these cases, hand-to-hand fighting took place in enemy trenches, on roads, paths, near water bodies, in populated areas, in separate rooms, among destroyed buildings, etc. Even in the book Instructions for Preparing for Hand-to-Hand Combat of the Red Army, 1938, it was clearly defined that every fighter, commander of the Red Army, must be physically versatile, strong, dexterous, enduring, be bold, enterprising and make quick decisions in accordance with the actions of the enemy. be able to move quickly, covertly and silently in various ways, and overcome natural and artificial obstacles, combine attacking movement with the use of fire. At any time and from various positions, quickly inflict injections, blows on the enemy, beat off the enemy's weapons and immediately respond with an attack. Use improvised means in hand-to-hand combat: a shovel, an axe, a pickaxe, a knife, a stick, a stone, a handful of sand, etc. Disarm the enemy and hit him with his own weapon. Timely and tactically expedient to apply one or another technique of combat. Conduct hand-to-hand combat against several opponents, 1 against 2, as part of a unit. Strive for mutual assistance and in all cases help a comrade with fire, a bayonet, a grenade, a shovel and personal assistance. Say what you like, but the requirements are quite clear and tough. In order to develop all of the above qualities in a student, it is clearly not enough to be limited to thrashing on a makiwara or a pair and traditional stretching. Preparation for hand-to-hand combat is a means of instilling skills for close combat, a means of physical training, a powerful psychological factor that strengthens the morale of warriors, contributing to the cultivation of the desire to get close to the enemy, regardless of any obstacles. A fighter who feels his strength in hand-to-hand combat maneuvers more freely on the battlefield, confidently fires and approaches the enemy more boldly and quickly. Now in Russia, more than 500,000 citizens are actively practicing army hand-to-hand combat. Russia ranks first in the number of prize-winning fighters in this sport. Army H2H is successfully developing both in various sports societies and in law enforcement agencies. Well, train, develop yourself and be reliable defenders of your family and fatherland. That's all. Newsoldier was with you. Don't forget to like the video and wait for new interesting stories on our channel. Until we meet again, friends! Narrated by Maxim Nikulin for Newsoldier channel.